In March of 1952, a machinist named Earl Hutchins bought a house in Akron, Ohio for $8,400 with a 20-year mortgage at 4% interest. His take-home pay was $62 a week. His mortgage payment was $41 a month. By 1961, 9 years after he signed the papers, the house was paid off entirely. He had not received an inheritance. He had not gotten a promotion. He had not won anything. He had used 25 methods that every working-class American homeowner of his generation knew and practiced without thinking of them as methods at all, because to Earl Hutchins and everyone he knew, this was simply how a responsible person handled a house payment. Number 21 on this list was practiced by the majority of American homeowners who paid off their mortgages before 1970 and is almost never discussed today because the banking industry spent the following 50 years making it structurally inconvenient. Number 9 was documented by a Federal Housing Administration study in 1958 that found families using it paid off their mortgages an average of 7 years early, while spending less on housing than comparable families who did not. And number 1 is the reason Earl Hutchins finished paying for his house 9 years early, while the family next door, who earned more and had a similar mortgage, was still making payments in 1974. These were not tricks. They were habits. The habits disappeared not because they stopped working, but because an entire financial industry was built on the premise that you should not use them. Before we start, subscribe, because what you are about to learn was standard knowledge for every American homeowner before 1970 and has been quietly made to seem impossible ever since. Number 25. Buying the house the payment could survive, not the house the income could afford. The first decision that determined whether an American family paid off their mortgage in 10 years or 30 was not what they did after buying the house, it was which house they bought. The standard of Earl Hutchins' generation was that a mortgage payment should consume no more than 20% of take-home pay, not gross income. Take-home pay. A family earning $300 a month after taxes bought a house with a $60 monthly payment. In 1955, that discipline bought you a 3-bedroom house in most American cities and left 80% of your income available for food, savings, and the extra mortgage payments that accelerated payoff. The modern standard, promoted by the mortgage industry, is that you can afford a payment equal to 28 to 36% of gross income. That is not an affordability standard. It is a maximum extraction standard. It tells you how much the bank can take before the loan statistically defaults. Earl Hutchins' generation understood that the house you buy is the financial decision that determines everything else. They bought houses they could easily afford, rather than houses that maximally stretched their capacity. Your grandfather, who lived in a modest house on a good salary, was not being cautious. He was being strategic. Number 24, the single extra payment per year. This is the method that the Federal Housing Administration study identified as the single most common practice among American homeowners who paid off their mortgages early, and it requires no financial sophistication whatsoever. On a 30-year mortgage at a standard mid-century interest rate, making one additional full principal payment per year reduces the loan term by approximately 7 to 8 years and saves the equivalent of years of interest payments. Earl Hutchins made his extra payment every March using his federal tax refund. He did not think of it as a financial strategy. He thought of it as something you did with money that arrived unexpectedly, the same way you put a windfall toward the house rather than toward a want. In 1955, this practice was so common among working-class homeowners that bank loan officers assumed it when calculating expected payoff timelines. By 1985, the same bank loan officers had stopped mentioning it entirely because their compensation was tied to the full interest income of a 30-year loan. The information did not disappear. The incentive to share it did. Number 23, the biweekly payment system. Instead of making 12 monthly mortgage payments per year, Families who paid biweekly made 26 half payments, which equals 13 full payments annually. That one extra payment per year, delivered automatically through the rhythm of a biweekly paycheck, reduced a 30-year mortgage to approximately 23 years, with no additional financial strain because the money came from the natural paycheck cycle rather than from a separate savings effort. In 1948, the majority of American factory workers were paid bi-weekly, and the families who aligned their mortgage payments to their paycheck schedule rather than to a monthly calendar were making this extra payment without ever deciding to. When pay cycles became more varied and mortgage servicers began charging fees to set up bi-weekly arrangements, this practice became less automatic. Today, most mortgage servicers will set up a bi-weekly payment schedule for a fee that they charge you to implement something that saves them nothing and costs you thousands of dollars not to do. Number 22. Rounding up every payment. Earl Hutchins's mortgage payment was $41.23 per month. He paid $45. The $3.77 difference went entirely to principal, because his interest was already covered by the $41.23. Over 12 months, that was $45.24 in additional principal reduction. Over the 9 years he held the mortgage, that rounding up habit eliminated approximately 6 months of payments at the back end of the loan. It required no budgeting discipline beyond the initial decision to round up, which he made once in 1952 and never reconsidered. His bank did not make it easy to apply extra payments to principal. He had to write it on the check. He wrote it on every check for 9 years. The habit cost him less than $4 a month and saved him more than 6 months of mortgage payments at a time when 6 months of payments represented a significant fraction of a working-class family's annual income. Number 21. Applying every windfall directly to principal. In Earl Hutchins's generation, the financial norm for unexpected money, tax refunds, overtime pay, small inheritances, bonuses, and cash gifts was that it went to the house. Not toward a vacation, not toward furniture, not toward a newer car, toward the house. This norm was so widely shared that it was essentially a social expectation. A family that received a $200 inheritance and spent it on anything other than debt reduction or emergency savings was considered financially irresponsible by their community. In 1953, the average American household received its federal tax refund in April, and the majority of homeowners in the post-war suburbs applied it directly to their mortgage principal. By 1975, the consumer credit industry had spent 20 years training American families to treat windfalls as spending opportunities. The industry had a specific interest in this training. A dollar spent on a consumer purchase generates retail profit and potentially credit card interest. A dollar applied to mortgage principal generates nothing for any financial institution. The training was effective. The habit it replaced was more effective at building family wealth. Number 20. The strict separation of housing costs from lifestyle costs. Families that paid off their mortgages early treated housing as a fixed obligation that was served first and invisibly, not as a number that could be traded off against other expenses. Earl Hutchins' wife Dorothy kept a household budget in a spiral notebook. The mortgage payment was the first line. It was not negotiable. It was not something they considered reducing when money was tight. Every other expense in the notebook was subject to reduction before the mortgage payment was touched. This accounting structure, where the mortgage was categorically separate from and prior to all discretionary spending, meant that the mortgage was never in competition with other wants. Modern financial advice frequently treats the mortgage as one expense among many to be balanced against others. That framing makes it possible to justify refinancing to extract equity for consumption, to skip extra payments in favor of discretionary spending, and to treat the house as an ATM rather than an asset being paid off. Dorothy Hutchins's spiral notebook did not allow any of those decisions. Number 19. DIY, maintenance and repair as a mortgage acceleration strategy. Every dollar that did not leave the Hutchins household as a payment to a contractor plumber, electrician, or repair service, was $1 available to apply to the mortgage. Earl Hutchins fixed his own plumbing, painted his own house, repaired his own roof, maintained his own furnace, and rebuilt his own fence. This was not unusual among men of his generation and class. The trades knowledge that working-class men brought home from military service, from apprenticeships, and from fathers and uncles who had built their own homes meant that the standard American working-class household of the 1950s could handle the majority of its maintenance needs internally. The Federal Housing Administration estimated in 1960 that homeowners who performed their own maintenance spent 60 to 70% less on housing upkeep than homeowners who contracted all repairs. That difference, reliably redirected to mortgage principal, was the equivalent of 1 to 2 extra payments per year. Number 18. Growing food to reduce the grocery budget and redirect savings to the house. In 1952, approximately 40% of American single-family homeowners maintained a kitchen garden. It was not gardening as a hobby. It was food production as a financial strategy. A family with a productive 400-square-foot garden in Akron, Ohio in 1954 reduced its annual grocery costs by $80 to $120, which represented approximately 2 to 3 months of Earl Hutchins' mortgage payment. That money, consistently redirected, was the equivalent of 2 extra mortgage payments per year. The garden required labor, but no cash input beyond seeds, which cost pennies. The financial return on that labor, measured in mortgage acceleration, was higher than any savings account available to working-class Americans at the time. Suburban gardening peaked in the mid-1950s and declined through the 1960s as processed food became cheaper, and the cultural association between gardening and poverty was deliberately reinforced by advertising campaigns for convenience foods. The families that maintained their gardens and their redirection discipline were the families that owned their homes free and clear before their neighbors. Number 17. Eliminating every recurring bill that was not essential before taking on a mortgage. The generation that paid off mortgages in under 15 years did not carry the portfolio of recurring monthly obligations that modern households consider standard. No cable television subscription, no streaming services, no gym membership, no car payments on 2 vehicles simultaneously, no subscription boxes, no monthly software fees. The average American household in 1952 had 2 recurring monthly obligations beyond rent or mortgage, utilities and insurance. The average American household today has between 15 and 25 recurring monthly subscriptions and payment obligations beyond housing and utilities. Each of those obligations competes with the mortgage for the monthly surplus that would otherwise be available for principal reduction. Earl Hutchins' household had surplus because it had very few competitors for that surplus. The surplus went to the house. Number 16. The 30-year mortgage treated as a 15-year target. Many families of Earl Hutchins' generation took 30-year mortgages because the monthly payment was lower and more manageable. But they paid them as if they were 15-year mortgages from the beginning. They used the flexibility of the 30-year structure as insurance against hard months while maintaining the discipline of a 15-year payment schedule during normal months. In 1954, the difference between a 30-year mortgage payment and a 15-year mortgage payment on an $8,000 loan at 4% was approximately $22 per month. Families who paid the 30-year payment plus $22 every month were effectively on a 15-year schedule with the safety net of being able to drop to the 30-year payment if a genuine emergency required it. That flexibility meant they never had to refinance when times were hard. They simply paid less for a few months and then resumed. The discipline to resume, rather than to accept the lower payment as the new normal, was the difference between a 15-year payoff and a 25-year one. Here is where things get interesting. The methods above were about the direct financial mechanics of paying down principal faster. The ones below are about the broader household and community practices that the generation who paid off their mortgages early had internalized so completely that they never thought of them as mortgage strategies at all. This is the part that no financial advisor includes in a mortgage acceleration plan because none of it generates fees for anyone. Number 15, buying used and maintaining rather than buying new and replacing. The Hutchins family bought a car in 1951 for $800 cash and drove it for 11 years. They bought a washing machine for $120 in 1953 and repaired it themselves twice before replacing it in 1968. They owned 3 sets of dishes, 1 couch, and furniture that had been wedding gifts in 1947. None of this was deprivation. It was a financial operating system in which durable goods were maintained rather than replaced. And the money that did not leave the household through replacement purchases remained available for mortgage acceleration. A household that replaces a functional appliance with a newer model and finances the replacement is simultaneously increasing its debt load and reducing its surplus. The Hutchins household did neither. By 1961, when the mortgage was paid off, they had not bought a new car, a new major appliance, or new furniture since 1953. They were not behind. They owned their house. Number 14. The cash envelope budget applied specifically to discretionary spending. Dorothy Hutchins kept cash envelopes for groceries, clothing, entertainment, and household supplies. When the envelope was empty, the spending in that category stopped until the next month. This discipline was not about deprivation. It was about preventing the invisible spending erosion that occurs when purchases are made without a physical accounting of remaining budget. The cash envelope system has been documented by financial researchers to reduce discretionary spending by 15 to 20% compared to equivalent spending on credit or debit, because the physical act of removing cash creates a psychological cost that digital transactions do not. That 15 to 20% reduction in discretionary spending applied to a 1952 household budget was $15 to $30 per month, which was the equivalent of 1/3 to 2/3 of a monthly mortgage payment redirected to principal every month. Number 13, maintaining one household income buffer before accelerating payments. Families that successfully paid off their mortgages early almost universally maintained a cash reserve equivalent to 3 to 6 months of mortgage payments before they began accelerating payoff. This reserve was held in a savings account that was not touched except for genuine emergencies. Its existence meant that a job loss, a medical expense, or a major repair did not derail the acceleration strategy because the emergency had its own funding source. The families that did not maintain this buffer frequently had their acceleration strategy interrupted by crises that forced them to stop extra payments, and once stopped, the discipline of resuming was harder than the discipline of starting. Earl Hutchins kept 6 months of mortgage payments in a savings account from 1952 to 1961. He never needed to use it. Its existence was the reason he never needed to use it. Number 12. Living in the house before improving it. The generation that paid off mortgages early did not renovate kitchens in the first year of ownership. They did not update bathrooms before the mortgage was a year old. They did not add additions, finish basements, or build decks until the mortgage was significantly reduced or eliminated. Improvements were made with cash after the fact when the financial position of the household allowed them without debt. The modern practice of immediately improving a newly purchased home through home equity loans or cash-out refinancing converts equity into debt at the exact moment when maintaining equity and reducing debt would be most financially powerful. Earl Hutchins repainted his kitchen in 1963. The house was paid off in 1961. The sequence was intentional. Number 11. Using the mortgage payoff as the household's primary financial goal. In Earl Hutchins's household, every financial decision was evaluated against its effect on the mortgage payoff timeline. A discretionary purchase was not evaluated as affordable or unaffordable, based on whether the monthly payment could be managed. It was evaluated based on whether the total cost represented mortgage payments that would be deferred. A $200 purchase was not $200. It was 5 extra mortgage payments that would not be made this year. This mental accounting converted every spending decision into a direct trade-off against the primary goal. Modern financial culture rarely frames spending decisions this way because the primary financial goal of the average American household is not explicitly defined. Without a primary goal, every spending decision is evaluated in isolation rather than against a priority that gives it context. Number 10. The community of households with identical goals. Earl Hutchins Street in Akron in 1952 was populated almost entirely by families with mortgages at roughly similar income levels and roughly similar payoff ambitions. The social environment reinforced the financial behavior. Conspicuous consumption was not a status marker in this community. Owning your house was a status marker. A neighbor who paid off his mortgage was a figure of genuine community respect. This social reinforcement, which economists call peer effects, is among the most powerful determinants of financial behavior. A household embedded in a community of savers behaves like a saver. A household embedded in a community of consumers behaves like a consumer. The post-war American working-class neighborhood was, without designing itself this way, one of the most effective environments ever created for mortgage acceleration because every social signal pointed toward the same goal. Number 9. Directing the second income entirely to the mortgage. In the families that paid off mortgages fastest, whenever a second income entered the household, whether from a spouse returning to work, a boarder renting a room, a side job, or any other secondary source, that income was applied in its entirety to the mortgage, not partly, entirely. The household had been running on one income. It continued to run on one income. The second income had no lifestyle attached to it because no lifestyle had been built on its expectation. In 1958, the Federal Housing Administration documented this practice as the most reliable predictor of early mortgage payoff among the households it studied. Families that added a second income and maintained first income lifestyle while applying second income entirely to principal paid off their mortgages an average of 7 years early. Families that expanded their lifestyle to match the combined income paid off their mortgages on the original 30-year schedule. Number 8. Never refinancing to extract equity. In the 30 years after World War II, the majority of American homeowners who paid off their mortgages early shared one characteristic beyond all the payment discipline and budget management. They never refinanced their mortgages to access the equity they had built. The cash-out refinance, which allows a homeowner to borrow against the equity in the house, was available from the 1960s onward and was promoted aggressively by banks as a tool for home improvement, education, and consumption. The families that used it reset their payoff clock. A family that had paid down 10 years of a 20-year mortgage and then refinanced to extract equity was, in terms of their financial position, back near the beginning. Earl Hutchins was offered a refinancing arrangement in 1958 that would have given him $3,000 in cash and extended his mortgage by 5 years. He declined. The $3,000 would have cost him 5 years of payments at a time when he was 3 years from being done. He did the arithmetic. Most people receiving the same offer today do not do the arithmetic. Number 7. Maintaining the mortgage payment as a savings habit after payoff. This is the method that distinguished the families that built lasting wealth from the families that simply paid off their house. The month after Earl Hutchins made his final mortgage payment, he opened a savings account and deposited $41.23 into it. He had been paying $41.23 a month for 9 years. The discipline of making that payment existed in his financial system. He redirected it rather than releasing it. Within 10 years, that account had grown to a sum that equaled a significant fraction of the original house price. He had converted the habit of mortgage payment into the habit of wealth building, and the transition was seamless because he made it the month the mortgage ended rather than allowing the freed cash to disperse into consumption. The financial industry benefits when freed mortgage payments become consumer spending. Earl Hutchins benefited when they became savings. Number 6. Choosing the neighborhood by the school of the neighbors, not by the status of the address. The Hutchins house was in a modest neighborhood. It was not the best neighborhood Earl could have aspired to. It was the neighborhood where his mortgage payment was manageable and his neighbors shared his financial orientation. The decision to buy in a prestigious neighborhood, which requires a larger mortgage, longer payoff period, higher property taxes, more expensive maintenance, and social pressure to consume at the level of the neighbors, is one of the most reliably wealth-destroying financial decisions an American family can make. The families that paid off their mortgages early almost universally bought in neighborhoods below their income aspirations. The families that are still paying mortgages in their late 60s almost universally bought in neighborhoods at or above their income aspirations. The house is not just a home. It is the financial context that shapes every subsequent financial decision. Number 5. Treating the mortgage as a moral obligation rather than a financial product. In Earl Hutchins' generation, the mortgage was understood as a promise. Defaulting on a mortgage was not a financial event with credit consequences. It was a moral failure with community consequences. This is not a financial strategy. It is a psychological orientation. But its financial effects were significant. A household that treats the mortgage as a moral obligation behaves differently from a household that treats it as a financial product to be optimized. The mortgage as promise household does not walk away from an underwater property when it becomes financially rational to do so. It does not refinance strategically to reset terms. It pays what it owes until it is done. The reliability of this orientation, combined with the payment discipline that accompanied it, was the foundation on which all the other methods operated. Number 4. The barn-raising principle applied to home improvement. When Earl Hutchins needed his roof replaced in 1956, he did not hire a roofing company. He organized a weekend with 4 neighbors who also needed various home maintenance work done. They replaced his roof on Saturday. He helped each of them with their projects over the following 3 weekends. No money changed hands. The labor cost was zero. The materials cost was split and paid in cash. The same exchange happened across his neighborhood for fence repairs, painting, landscaping, minor construction, and dozens of other tasks that a modern homeowner pays contractors to perform. This exchange economy of skilled home maintenance labor reduced the cash outflow of every household involved and freed that cash for mortgage acceleration. It required community relationships deep enough that you could ask a neighbor to give up a Saturday and trust that the favor would be returned. Earl Hutchins had those relationships because he had invested in them over years. They were worth, in direct financial terms, several extra mortgage payments per year. Number 3. Starting with less and adding as the mortgage decreased. The Hutchins family moved into their house in 1952 with 1 bedroom furnished, a kitchen table with 4 chairs, and a couch that Dorothy Hutchins had recovered with fabric she bought for $4. Over the 9 years of the mortgage, they gradually furnished and improved the house as the mortgage balance decreased and their financial position strengthened. The sequence, mortgage first and comfort second, is the reverse of the sequence that modern home purchasing encourages. Today, a newly purchased home is typically fully furnished on credit within the first year of ownership, adding consumer debt to mortgage debt at the exact moment when the household's financial resources should be concentrated on the primary asset. The Hutchins household sequence was not deprivation. It was the recognition that the house was the investment and everything inside it was secondary. Number 2, never borrowing against the house for anything that was not the house. In the 50 years after World War II, the home equity loan was marketed to American homeowners as a source of funding for everything from college education to kitchen renovations to vacation travel. Families that used their home equity for any of these purposes effectively reset their mortgage payoff timelines and paid interest on consumption rather than building equity. Earl Hutchins's rule was simple. The house paid for the house. Nothing else used the house as collateral. Nothing else was funded by the house. The house was the destination for money, not a source of it. That rule meant the equity Earl Hutchins built with every payment stayed in the house until the house was paid off, and then the house, fully paid, became an asset that generated no monthly obligation and required no debt service. In 1961, Earl Hutchins's housing costs dropped from $41.23 per month to approximately $12 per month in property taxes and insurance. His neighbors, who had refinanced twice to access equity, were still paying $67 per month on an extended loan that would not be paid off until 1978. Number 1. Understanding that the mortgage is not the beginning of wealth, it is the end of it. Earl Hutchins did not think of his mortgage as the first step in building wealth. He thought of it as the last obstacle between his family and a position of genuine financial strength. Until the mortgage was paid, the house was not his. It was the bank's collateral. His labor, every week, was partly the bank's labor. His freedom to make financial decisions, to take risks, to change jobs, to move, to help his children, was constrained by the monthly obligation. The day the mortgage was paid, that constraint lifted. He was no longer working partly for the bank. He was working entirely for himself and his family. That shift, from encumbered to unencumbered, from obligated to free, is the real financial event that the mortgage industry has spent 50 years trying to prevent you from experiencing by keeping you in a continuous cycle of debt. The refinance offer in 1958 that Earl Hutchins turned down was not an offer of $3,000. It was an offer to delay his freedom by 5 years. He understood what was being offered. That understanding is number 1 on this list, not because it is a technique, but because without it, none of the other techniques make sense. Your house should not be a financial product you manage. It should be the last financial obligation you carry, paid off as quickly as your discipline and ingenuity allow, so that everything that comes after it belongs entirely to you.